Welcome to Squat Rex. Louis Simmons changed the face of powerlifting at Westside Barbell when he introduced the heavy use of bands and chains to power lifts. Today on Squat Rex we're going to talk about how to set up chains and bands. If you aren't blessed with the squat rack equipped to deal with bands, you can rig something up with dumbbells. Round dumbbells will work, but in order to secure the dumbbells on the floor, you'll need to place plates on either side of it, and you'll probably need to lay other dumbbells across it to make sure it isn't going to roll away. If you have hex dumbbells, you have a bit of an advantage because they aren't going to roll and they have a flat surface that you can put a plate on top of to help secure it. If you're using average bands with tension throughout the movement, and depending on how tall you are, you're probably going to need some pretty heavy dumbbells. We're talking probably over 100 range to 150 pound range dumbbells. Again, the good thing about having hex dumbbells is that you can just very easily place plates on top and thread the band through. I'm going to show you very quickly how I would set this up. I'm going to loop, because I'm short, I'm going to need a little bit more tension at the bottom. I'm going to loop this band around the handle. Hopefully the handle is relatively smooth. I'm going to loop this around the handle of the dumbbell, and then I'm going to choke the band through. Now, that's pretty secure as is, but at the top of the squat, this is probably going to have enough tension that the weight will be floating off of the floor. So on top of this hex dumbbell, I'm going to place this 45-pound plate, and I'm going to thread the band through, place it on top of this hex dumbbell. Now that I have the bands set up in line from where I'm going to be squatting, I'm going to take these bands and put them on the bar. Now, if you had a monolift or if you had someone to help you out, you could probably muscle these bands all the way up to the bar. But because the tension is high and because I'm a little worried about the balance of the bar, I'm going to take the bar down to these pins first, and then I'm going to squat the empty bar with the bands up to the J-hooks. Now that I have the band set up in a semi-secure position, I'm going to squat this weight up. If it's a bit of a challenge, I might start with these pins a little bit higher and then reset them when I start my squat set. I can also put a box underneath me to help me get started with this movement. So there you have it. We're all set up and ready to go. One thing you want to make sure is make sure that this anchor point is set directly below where you're going to be squatting. Some people will do bands and squats without a box. I'm not a big personal fan of that. I just always felt it was a little bit too risky for me. So now we're ready to go. You want to make sure that you're set. Make sure you're totally tight as you come out of the J-hooks. This band tension is going to hit you pretty hard until you get used to it. Step out of the racks, be set and ready to go. Break at the hips. Back to the hips. There you have it. An alternative way to set up the bands in a power rack is to have them choked at the top of the power rack and then looping them to the sleeves of the barbell. This will have a little bit of a different effect than anchoring the bands from the ground, in that it will be providing the most assistance at the bottom, and then it will be helping you accelerate out of the hole. A common question has to deal with tension of the bands. A lot of people ask, how much weight is this adding to my lifts? It's a difficult question to answer because a lot of that depends on how you anchor the bands, how tall you are, your limb length, etc. Don't get too caught up in that. If you're a novice lifter, you probably want to start with mini or light bands. If you are an intermediate or advanced lifter, you could look at some of the heavier gauge bands. But for most people, again, the light bands are going to be sufficient for most of their needs. Chains are fantastic for adding accommodating resistance. If you're selecting a chain set, one thing you want to look for is that it comes with a connector chain to go along with the very heavy 5/8 inch chain or 1/2 inch diameter chain. The connector chain allows you to vary the distance from the bar to the chain. And the chain is going to start out by just raising the ground at the top of the movement. And then as you sink down into the hole, it's going to deload. And then again, as you rise from the bottom of the hole, it's going to load up again. I bought these chains from Elite Fitness, and the products they have there are excellent. You'll want to set this up, like I said, so that at the top of the squat movement, the chains are just gently swaying, and then at the bottom, you're going to have almost full deload at the bottom of the squat. Squat with chains. A common question on internet forums: what should I buy, chains or bands? The two are really very different pieces of equipment, and they each have advantages and disadvantages. Some of the advantages of chains, for example, is that the loading of the chain as you rise with the weight and deloading as you sink into the hole in your squat, for example, is very smooth. Also with chains, the setup is very simple and takes almost no time whatsoever. You'll never have to replace your chains, they'll last forever. They are a little bit more expensive though, and they are also very heavy, so if you have to transport them to and from the gym, it can be a hassle. Bands are relatively inexpensive, but you probably will have to replace them if you use them heavily. Some of the advantages of bands are that you can use them for a great many exercises and rehabilitation exercises, GPP exercises, really just about anything that you could think of. And they're easy to throw into a gym bag and take with you just about anywhere. You could even take them to a hotel if you needed some kind of quick workout there. Bands tend to track you into a particular groove, not much unlike a Smith machine. Whereas with chains, the pattern of movement is a little bit more natural. They're both excellent pieces of equipment. I highly recommend that you get some.